We're going to pledge allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Don't forget that. That's what take me in. A statement by the chair. This is a budget workshop number 1. And who would like to start? Are we going with IT or are we going with John McNamee? Doesn't matter to me. Just tell me what page. Start with you, John?
What we're going to do is we're going to go through the PowerPoint, which
You got it.
a high-level review of the budget. And then we'll go through the individual accounts.
You got it. Thank you.
As you requested. So we'll start off with the student enrollment. We're looking at 241 pre-K to 8, 118 at the high school.
May I just ask you to go back to for that for 1 second so I can write down the 2017? It doesn't appear on this one. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm on the wrong page. That's why. Thank you. Sorry, John.
Okay. And this is 18, 19, and 20 enrollment by grade level. We have 17 in pre-K, 18 in kindergarten in current year. These are the enrollments as of 24 grade 1, 22 grade 2, 24 in grades 3 and 4, 32 in grade 5, 26 and 6, 27 in 7th and 8th grades. Okay, so when we look at this particular chart, we look at, let's just look at K here. So we have 18 going into K. So if we have comparable numbers going into K, we'll have 27 coming out. So that delta will show a little bit of a decline in enrollment. But this is a number that's so difficult to get around. And with the pre-K, we now have 20 active sections. So we have 9 in one and 8 in another in the pre-K side.
And of the 2019, of the 245, how many are tuition students, or the 20, I guess, of the 241?
241, we have 9 tuition students. And this is by grade level at the high school. So currently we have 31, 34 and 11, 32 and 10, and 21 and 9. We have basically, I have 27 coming out of grade 8 into the high school next year, but the FY21 budget, minus 2 that would probably go out to private and parochial. So you'll see later on, we're looking at probably about 112 for our enrollment for Buckland High School in FY21. So that'll be a little bit of a decline in terms of tuition costs.
So we're putting in our budget 118 for PHS.
Yeah, we'll go over that. 112 actually.
I'm sorry, 112?
112, yeah. We'll go over those numbers. We'll go through the prices. So right now in state aid, you get a little bit of a bump in state aid at FY20. We went from 355 to 403, so a 13.5% increase. But based on a total budget, our state aid is not really a significant factor. When we're looking at $7.5 million budget.
What goes into the increase? Yeah.
The increase is based on the calculation of residential average daily membership within the district. And also the state share will change, and as it changes, it will increase the state aid. somewhat. So we had a little bit of a tweak of the change in the state, the amount of the state contribution, as well as we had a little bit of a bump in the enrollment. The town appropriation, last year, if you recall, we had $178,405, which was 2.59%. What we're proposing, again, I want you to know that this is a preliminary budget. There's still numbers that are coming in. For example, today I met with Lori, and one of the numbers I forgot to put in there was the baccalaureate, international baccalaureate fee. So this is $9,500 that got added to the budget. But there may be other things that we'll end up doing before we do the second round of numbers. So we're looking right now at $199,382, which would be an increase of 2.82%. If you recall, we look at this number because under state law, we could not increase any more than 4% above what the town appropriation was in the prior year. So right now, we're looking above 2.82%. Our expenditures are going from $7,532,37 in the FY20 budget to $7,729,355, which is an increase of 2.91% on the expense side. So on the revenues, not a big deal in state aid. What we're receiving is about $1,736 more in state aid for what we got in FY20. Budgeting still 9 out-of-district students at 6,000. We have the potential to do better than that, but right now we're planning on 9 for this budget. And the other increase is the increase in the town appropriation, which would be $199,382. So that would balance out the budget.
At 9, that number's climbing, right?
This is, I mean, we started out with maybe what?
I think we topped out at 11.
We started out with 11,
One family moved to Little Compton.
so they're no longer tuition paying, but they are now fully enrolled in paying taxes.
That made it to 10.
And then a little kindergartner
We had a kindergartner leave.
did leave for family.
Last year, I think our budget was 36. The year before, it might have been 30. But 54 at this point. So it's, yeah.
When do they have to commit?
It's pretty much rolling admissions.
Probably mostly in the spring.
We do run an advertising for
I would say all summer,
spring.
they start rolling in, we do tours, our ambassador is Heather Fitzgerald, the principal's assistant, she does a great job. We do brochure drops, articles in the newspaper, we do some PR.
Do we have a prorated tuition when they, I mean, has it ever happened that tuition-paying students come in partway through the year?
I believe so. John, could you confirm, did we have some in the past kids come in after day one or?
Well, we
They came monthly, so.
yeah, so we had the one student that moved into the district, so they paid for the first
Right.
half of the year, and then when they moved in, obviously we didn't charge. But I don't know whether we had any that moved in during the year.
Or left before the end, or, it's a monthly fee anyway, they pay monthly.
I know they break it down that way, or like allow for that payment option, but I didn't realize it was tied to the month.
I think it was quarterly. We were looking to do quarterly. Some people prefer to pay monthly, so we made those arrangements, but we haven't had any, obviously, issues with collecting tuition.
I don't think anybody's just moved. I think the people that it's happened to have moved into
Right.
Compton.
Thank you so much.
So salary and wages certainly are our biggest component of our budget. And there is no increase in the certified full-time equivalents. However, we were required to add 1 FTE as a teacher assistant for special education. We're currently bargaining now with the teachers union. Non-certified personnel has an increase of 2% included in there. Administrative salaries are based on the current contracts, and we fringe benefits, we don't really get the increase in the healthcare rates from the trust until sometime in March, early April. So this 7% increase, I use some healthcare consultants in Lincoln, and they're basically telling me that you should be looking at a minimum 7% increase annual on healthcare. If you recall, last year, we actually had a decrease. So I'm projecting right now at 7%. When those other numbers come in, we can always tweak the budget at that point in time. I did talk to the town administrator for the town, and I think they're going to be looking at using something like that in their increase as well. So then the rate increase, 2%. I don't think it should be any higher than that. Currently, we have 20% co-share for teachers, 18% for non-certified administrators. ERSRI had teachers' pension had a bump in their contribution rate of 0.38% this year in 2021. And we'll have a little bit of an increase in payroll taxes and defined contribution pension expense as a result of increases in salaries. So that handles most of the fringe benefits. On the tuitions, as we indicated, we used 112 as our total tuition students for Portsmouth High School. I'm using a 3% increase in our overall tuition, so we'd be looking at paying $10,464 annual for the Portsmouth High School.
That's 3% on the tuition itself, the first student tuition.
3%.
So you mean, is that a good time to explain where we're at in the process, what year we're at with Portsmouth High School and where we're going to be going soon, in the next 6 months?
Well, it's, at this point,
Next year.
we had a 10-year contract, so we're into, this will be, I guess, year 7, 8, or 8.
This is year 8, and
Year
then
8.
21 is 9, and then 22 is 10, but we have to tell them by June 31st, 2021.
It's a stipulation in the contract that we start negotiating a year in advance.
Actually, 2 years in advance, because we have to inform Portsmouth by June 31st, or June 30th
This year.
of 2021, whether or not, that's my understanding.
I thought at the meeting you said that we were going to be looking at going up to bid.
Yep, but I think we don't need a firm decision shared with Portsmouth until the drop dead date for that is June 30th, 2021,
2021.
for their being informed, notified, yes or no. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm reasonably certain that's it. June 30th, 2021, they have to know. We will be contacted with
The special education estimate for the out-of-district tuition, and again, this is a number that changes sometimes daily, but we're looking at $36,000 in the current year. Our vocational ed is we're looking at 2 students at the net tuition course of $17,573. That has a 3% increase in last year's tuition. The Department of Education sets that tuition for the state schools based on the funding formula. So that may change to stay the same, but we'll get a 3% increase in that as well. And then we have 2 full-time students and 1 part-time student at Newport Career Tech. That tuition cost of $14,935 each.
If I may, I think I forgot to add it, there's 1 CTE student at Tiverton High School.
At where?
Tiverton High.
So, okay, so we
You might have lumped that into the Portsmouth High.
haven't got a tuition bill for that.
And normally we remind them to send us one, no, just kidding. She's there, and we've done the transportation. She's using that CTE. I remember giving you a heads up. We probably have her in with, she's using the CTE school choice option.
We don't have a bill for that. I can find out what we're supposed to pay, but.
Yeah.
What grade is she?
Nice.
So we're anticipating she'll be there.
So there's a slide that says PHS enrollment, 118, and then there's another one that says 112.
Yeah, 112 will be up by 21 budget, so I'm taking grade 8, adding that, and taking out grade 12.
Grade 12.
Taking 2 students off that might matriculate to a private approach to the school. This one, we've got a preliminary budget from the collaborative, and that number, the 367,200 is the gross amount that they charge us. That's compared to last year, which was like 288,000, so it's up a little over 80,000. So they're having some operating, increase in operating costs there at the district. We figured we were going to have an increase. Now, we do fund a portion of that with our IDA, our federal grant, so we get $94,000 and another $2,000 IDA preschool that we can use to offset that tuition. So the net cost, which is in the budget in the general fund, is the $271,200. And again, that's about an $87,000 increase over FY20. I don't know if you want to add anything on that. Lori sits on the board there, but we're going to meet, the business managers are going to meet with the collaborative in the next couple of weeks to find out.
January 29th is bringing business manager to the board day. We do that a few times a year. We had a board meeting last Wednesday, and we are looking to home grow more programs to bring in some efficiencies. So right now we outsource some of the specialized programs to Lifespan, Bradley Hospital, and so forth. And so hopefully that number will come down as we look to home grow. We did home grow one this year that we had outsourced to a 501c3 that was located at Roger Williams, because that's the transition program. So we home grew that. And that is now at Go Day Middle School. We're thinking of home growing a few others. So hopefully the 87,000 is highest, and it will come down. We're hoping.
Is the increase a result of the other districts withdrawing from the collaborative?
Portsmouth's been out now at least 3+ years, and actually it went down after they went out.
It's just the cost of
So,
specialized.
there's just some added costs that are in there too, so.
Also specialized programs, the cost of transportation for specialized program.
I mean, our share
It's
is,
8%?
yeah, our share is roughly about 8%, and then, of course, there's a portion of it that's based on the number of IEPs that we do have. We did have a little bit of an increase in the number of IEPs, but, it's something that's obviously mandated, and it's not something we can actually do in district without doing this collaboratively with these other 2 communities.
There's a lot of bang for our buck belonging to East Bay, belonging to the Newport County Regional Specialized Program.
Busing course, the busing contract expires at the end of this year. So we're going to be going out for bids with Portsmouth, Barrington, Bristol, Warren, and ourselves. We did a joint proposal 5 years ago. And so we've got a consultant to put the bid out, the RFP out. And so basically what I'm looking at is a 5% increase over what we're paying now, but I'm not sure what's going to happen. But I know with busing, over the past 5 years, I think these contracts you enter into, you start with year one, and then you have cost of living increases. So generally, they're going to have, I'm assuming that we'll wind up having an increase that'll be close to the 5% because it's just difficult getting drivers. They're all having issues in terms of getting labor. So based on the existing buses that we have, I'm looking at a 5% increase in the daily rates for the buses, keeping the same number of buses and the same number of bus monitor hours, which is roughly about 4,100.
Superintendent Mitchell, has there been any problems with the buses lately? I mean, I know as soon as school started,
Get it to my desk.
as soon as school started, all heck broke loose.
What happens at the beginning of the year, Versatrans, first student does rely on piece of software.
Yeah,
to set all of those.
but nothing, when did it die down?
It died down maybe within 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks. But it was pretty active. It was pretty active
For
2
sure.
weeks, every day.
Just wondering, is size our friend in this or our enemy? So if we're pooling with other towns and they're looking for a bid on a large number of buses services, we only need a small one, does that open us up for more people to compete? If we're doing a small bid instead of...
There's a limited number of bus companies, basically. There's probably 4 in the state that really that you can accommodate. So you got First Student, you got DATCO out of Connecticut, you got Durham, and you got Ocean State Bus Transportation. Those 4 basically do most of the busing. A lot of the mom and pop bus companies have gotten out of the business. There's more requirements in terms of having cameras on the buses, having GPS tracking, even just getting bus drivers. I know like First Student was offering $2,000 sign-on bonuses just to try to get bus drivers. So I'm leery, in fact, in my other district, that we were thinking, well, we'll go out and bid and get a better price. I said, no, we're not going to get a better price. We should stay in the 5th year of the contract, which is locked in, and see. Because now these bus companies have to, basically, they have to go out and buy the equipment. And they generally like to do it over a 5-year, lead over a 5-year program. So, but what we do is we'll enter into a 3-year contract with 2 one-year options is the way we do it. But what they'll do is everybody bids, they bid on the individual municipalities that are going, the individual school districts that go into this RFP. So we don't have to select the bus company that's best for our district may not be the same one that Portsmouth might select. So the last time it worked out extremely well. In our case, it's small. It's probably not going to attract a lot of bidders. In fact, last time I think there were only 2 bidders on the contract. It was First Student and Ocean State Transportation.
Do any of the federal pre-K funds cover transportation in any way or no?
No. So pre-K, I don't know about the state program now. The government has this proposal for additional pre-K and construction, and if it's going to be funded through the funding formula, then that's going to be included in the funding formula. But right now, with the pre-K program, you're only required to transport special education students. So both in Lincoln and North Providence, where we had pre-Ks, for non-special education, we'd be charging a tuition for those children to attend, which is basically what we do here with the collaborative.
Yeah, we do charge tuition for pre-K.
And that money goes to the collaborative, and that gets split up.
It's nominal.
There is money for public and private transportation offset, but we really don't have a lot of that available. Well, we're not going to the state system to provide that, so we use one of our buses, I guess, the St. Kitts down to St. Phil's.
I was under the impression somehow that pre-K with the federal grant funding was effectively kind of cost neutral. What do we, but if we're paying for a bus, I have no idea how much the bus is, but do we know how much that one bus run adds to the load and whether or not the...
A couple of little kids.
The daily rate is probably maybe $160 a day.
The same for every other... is the pre-K program kind of cost neutral, or does it actually cost us money? What do we charge for tuition for pre-K people?
Well, it's all done through the collaborative. So the expenses are all split up to the collaborative, and they capture any of the revenue, any of the tuition revenue for that too. So our portion of the expenses obviously are deducted and offset against what we pay the collaborative in total. So if it's a net cost to the collaborative, we share in a percentage of that net cost. If there's income from it, we will share in our percentage of the income portion.
And do we know which it is? I was under the impression that the prior superintendent led us to believe that there effectively was no cost to running the pre-K program.
Well, it's probably not at that level. I'm not sure what the break even is on that. But we have, 9 and 8. I would imagine that we're probably...
I think we looked at raising the tuition, and it would be prohibitive for families to participate, families of the peers. So the classes are, 50% of the children in the morning have vulnerabilities, and 50% are their peers, and peers are charged. So we're talking 3 or 4 kids, maybe $10, $12 a day. It's only 4 days a week, it doesn't run on Mondays. So capturing tuition would in no way, shape, or form offset the cost here. It buys us such a small program.
But the program you have to provide to those children over 3 that...
Really intervening, yes.
Of the pre-K students, how many are from Little Compton and how many are from outside of town?
Good question. Let's see. The numbers, I would say most are from Little Compton. And I know of maybe one who is not. There is not anything in the child's home district.
And do we send the bus for that person out of town?
That's, I believe that's a peer. They just throw all the kids in.
So with the pre-K bus is confined to within Little Compton pickup?
I have the, just go back to the PHS contract I have it in front of me. And the PHS says that the contract commences at the start of the school year 2012 through 13 and runs through the school year of 2021/22. And the continuity is a 1-year notice is necessary to change this relationship. The mutual consent of both parties is necessary. So if it commences, if it runs through 2021/22, minus 1 is 2020/21.
Right.
If my math is correct.
So it's June 30th, 2021, they have to know by June 30th.
So a year, so we need to start negotiating in 2020.
Well, we need to put an RFP out.
It'll take us a year to make a decision.
And that's going to be June of this year.
That's right, yeah. that's
So
right.
we're almost, so we're about 5 months away from an RFP, and an RFP means we're going to ask for other schools to bid.
Right.
Right.
And the thought, and then why I go down this road is, the thought is, what we have for PHS and our tuition is, what, $10,000? Around?
Just a little under 10.
A little under 10. What do you think it's going to be from any other school that's going to bid for our children? I got a feeling it's not going to be $10,000.
Boy, I bet you a community like Portsmouth, Tiverton might come in
Yeah.
pretty
I just wanted to make that point, that we're gonna be finding out shortly.
That's $1.2 million of added tuition.
Right, so we're 10% of Portsmouth's budget.
Without any transportation costs. We bear the transportation costs. We also bear any special education costs. We also bear any ELL tuition as we go. So, I don't know. I just think it's a good deal to them.
Just wanted to put that out there because it's coming down the pike.
It's next year is the last year of the contract, right?
Year after.
So you're
It
out.
really should be this year that we're bidding.
Yeah, so this June, we're sending out an RFP. So we're gonna know what schools are offering our children.
It's 2 years from now that it runs out, June 30th, 2022.
Utility costs, see, we're having a little bit of an increase in our fuel oil. We have that a little bumps in cost. Some of these years, the costs are a little cheaper. They might fill it up in June and put 5,000 gallons in there. We can kind of hold it off on that. So we're looking at this year, we're going to run 35 for that. The electric costs, we're looking at a couple of options. It's increased because we've also moved our hot water from propane to electric, so we've added a little bit of cost there. But we are going to be looking at, see if we can enter into a net metering agreement. There's a number of school districts that enter into these agreements where these green energy projects, you can enter into a 20-year contract and wind up getting some significant credits on your utility bill. So, for example, in my other district, my total energy electric is around $375. I'm getting about $90,000 credits from one of these net metering energy agreements. So I've been in contact with the energy office for the state of Rhode Island, who is going to put an RFP together for us and see if it's going to be beneficial for us to enter into one of these agreements. So,
Did you say for 20 years?
you're basically entering into it for the life of the project. So when they put these green energy projects up, they want to sell out, for the life of the project.
Is there any funding for more sort of direct green energy sources, like solar panels on the roof?
There are, and part of this program, they will actually look into that to see if it makes sense for us to do it. I know when this building was built, I'm assuming that when it was rehabbed in 14, that they looked at the roof to make sure the structure could handle. But then you have to look at shadowing and other things. I think the town is doing one behind the public safety complex, but it's going to generate enough to cover just the public safety complex. So, but they will look into to maybe doing a project in-house. But when you do one and you own the project, then you got to maintain it. And so it may be that they will do the project here, but they actually own it, they maintain it, and we just enter into that net metering credit agreement with them. So
Why did we switch from propane to electricity?
I have no idea. I don't know whether it was an issue. I know we had to replace that water tank a couple of times, so I don't know.
Who would know?
We'd have to talk to Bill Moore, because it was a surprise to me when I asked him, "Are you putting in a water tank?" He said, "Yeah, we're putting it in, but it's electric." I said, "Yeah, I'll find out though."
That's the new stainless steel tank that replaced the corroded. The war had a rationale.
Numbers like this on an electric bill are kind of hard for a homeowner to understand, but is the electric bill burdened with a big percentage of the charge for delivery charges and all these other things like a home electric bill is? So the actual utilization of energy is a much smaller fraction.
Well, yeah, it's probably roughly about half. We're on the same contract with the town in terms of the purchase of the energy. So we buy our energy in a fixed contract through the town.
Right, so the point is if you do a metering agreement with somebody, then you're affecting maybe, a percentage increase on half of that number, but National Grid is still going to nail us for delivery and other state charges and things like that.
Yeah, but
We never get helps, but it's...
yeah, that's why they'll go through it and they look at it. Now, the RFP I have here, which is from Forster Gloucester, they're in the $375,000 annual range there. So there you can see some impact. The concern I have is that it's high, but it's not big enough to do this. But I also may see what we're doing on the town side, that maybe we do it as a combined unit.
And John, if I may, the Vision Energy audit that we're in contact with Jared Drummond about through National Grid.
Yeah,
It brings down 30%.
Yeah, I contacted the National Grid before Christmas because they talked about, I think Polly had recommended me look at LED lights on the outside. Well, they're going to come in and do a lighting audit. And what they do is there's a number of incentives that they have, and basically they'll wind up charging us a discounted rate over, and they will bill us over a 2-year period on our electric bill, which is going to offset the savings. So they're saying that the impact would have a zero impact on the energy cost. So they'll be contacting Chris Osborne, and they'll come in and do their energy audit and let us know what they can do to improve that end of it. And then basically we just have a little diesel for our generator that we're going to be using in FY21. On the curriculum supplies, those we increased. I know we have some music expenses that have been covered by the Little Compton Educational Foundation that are now coming back in, so we did increase the supplies a little bit for that. And quite frankly, I just don't know what the new RIDE standards on the curriculum are going to wind up impacting us. I know that in other districts, they're looking at increasing that to cover any curriculum changes. So, it's something we probably have to keep our eye on.
Well, this is the big one.
So,
That's a good punch.
on the capital outlay, before I bring it to go through the kids. The boiler upgrade, we're required, the boilers that we do have now, there's one that we need to replace, which is 48.5, and that's going to be coming into our FY20 operating budget. And I think I actually have it on the projection that's included in there. This is the upgrade of the second boiler with having an independent system, so that I guess the boiler failed because of thermal shock, because they were putting too much cold water into the boiler. So they're going to redesign it so that it doesn't happen. It's going to cost us some money. We've gone back to the original the mechanical engineers that we used in 2014 that did the building to see, they got the drawings and the designs to see if there's some issues there. And we may have some recourse with the design. And the trust, which we had contacted when the first boiler failed, is still looking into. First of all, they denied the claim, and then they came back and said they're going to take another look at it. But at this point, I've got that boiler in the FY '20 expenses, and I'm putting this one into the FY '21.
So we have a boiler that was put in 2014 that we need to replace for $73,000 when they did the renovation.
Yeah. So the boiler itself was damaged. This is not just a conditioning system ahead of it, so you can't shock the boiler again. You're actually replacing the whole heating plant.
Yeah.
So is this a good time to see, should we also be using that heating plant to provide water for heat instead of electricity with propane?
I think that's going to be looked at. Yeah.
Is that part of the ask, does that go back to Director Brown with the 2014 upgrade? Or who-
They're involved in this piece.
Well, I think Delta Mechanical is the mechanical engineers that we use on the project. So I know that Bill Myers going back to them and got the detailed drawings on the setup. So there was some question as to whether the installation was, whether the boilers were properly installed and why they did them the way they did them in terms of the setup. Industrial burner is the one that's recommending this change in order to eliminate the potential for that thermal shock to occur in the boilers again. But there was also some question as to the quality of the water going through and whether they needed to have some sort of a filtering system on that as well. So, you know, we haven't gone far enough down the road to look at this, and this is the estimate they've given us. But we do need to get the other boiler in because we need that backup boiler in place. And we're also waiting on the trust to come back, and I think the trust will also give us some recommendations on what we should be doing going forward. But I just wanted to put a placeholder in the budget, at least deal with that upgrade.
John, could you clarify, please, were both boilers from 2014 and the claim would be for both boilers or the backup one for 48?
Well, the backup one failed.
Yes, but was that from 2014 as well?
That one, I believe, was 2014. Yeah.
So we have a potential claim for $120,000, whatever, for both boilers.
Well, if this is the fix after doing the boiler number, after redoing the boiler, then this would be part of the claim that we would make against the project.
But not the 48. We'd eat the 48, is that what you're saying?
The 48 would be a claim against the trust for that particular boiler.
Director Brown did equip us with the operations and maintenance manual just in the past few days, and the drawings from Delta Mechanical. So they have been somewhat helpful as we go forward with our claim. That was at first denied, and now the door's open. They've asked for service logs, so we're just accumulating everything. And so hopefully there's some sort of
See, the trust, if it was a maintenance issue, they're not going to cover it from
Right.
an insurance standpoint. So that's what they're focusing in on.
Right.
Initially, they said, well, it was because we put too much cold water at one point into it. But then they kind of backed off on that, and they're looking at it again. So I'm hoping that we could at least get some remuneration for the 48.5 and then deal with this issue with the mechanical engineers. We talked about this at the safety meeting, the security cameras. I think John had priced those out at a little over $20,000, but we actually looked at increasing the number of cameras, so we should have enough in there to cover the cameras. Now, those cameras were not reimbursable under RIDE, under the project we had, so the infrastructure was. So we were planning on putting these into the budget so that we could get this system.
You had mentioned possible lease of the cameras. Have you decided against that, or are you advising against that?
Well, I did because we need a $50,000 classroom refresh for our interactive displays, so I'm looking at doing a 4-year lease on that, which would drop the 50 down to about $18,000 a year, so that I mean, we could do both, but I think the classroom refresh would be good for a 4-year lease.
Is interactive displays, does that mean whiteboards? Or,
TV's more similar, something like that actually. That is a touchscreen if we had turned it on right now. But a bigger, more modern version of that that would go on the wall in a classroom to replace the smart boards which are starting to show their age and the projectors that are starting to shut down.
The smart boards are relatively recent purchase, aren't they? I mean,
Yeah,
are they?
The displays were, yeah, we had those actually on the lease. The lease expired this past, I think it's September or so we paid that one off. That was a 3-year lease we did
It was
those.
a little before I got here, and some of the projectors are newer and definitely viable still. Some of them are a little bit older and starting to show their age. I'd say the smart boards, I haven't touched every one yet, but about 30% of the ones I've probably come across, the layer in the board itself that detects the touch has significant enough damage to make it unusable. So that's another problem that we're exploring options for. But as time goes on, a lot of newer technology can't take advantage of the smart board scenario either. They require newer digital devices to do like wireless touch displays, that kind of stuff. So it's definitely
Surely coincidental that their obsolescence is tied to the lease, the same time frame.
it is very convenient, but it is definitely technology.
And it's just throughout the school, every class, students do this.
Not every room, but another big part of that would be standardizing some of it. So some of the costs, some of the amount of frustration and time wasted, and people traveling from room to room that are encountering different types of technology, needing different types of adapters that we have to stock. There's such a small number of outlier cases that it would be worth including them just to standardize it.
And the cameras are social requirement, it's levied on.
Not for you.
The new security cameras, is that a requirement, it's levied on?
At the required value.
That's what I'm asking. I mean,
Oh, like me, for example.
No, I'm the school, I mean, does the school have to put these cameras in place?
Mostly for, for school safety. It's, the system we have now doesn't cover the vast majority of the school, and there's a lot of, there's a lack of coverage or quality for any of the existing cameras. It was recommended by a number of consultants and the safety committee.
So where that came from, Ben, was the school shooting in Parkland almost 2 years ago. A lot of schools had, looked at their brick and mortar, made safety committees, and we did the same. And this is what's come out of it, to upgrade our camera system here. Harden our front entrance. That's where it all came from. That's when it all started.
Both teachers.
And when we did look at our cameras, they were pretty bad. I think we had, 7 cameras?
Grainy.
I mean, just really bad. And,
We did get RIDE money for some of the upgrades, but the RIDE money.
but yeah, the cameras weren't, we
cameras.
couldn't get reimbursed on the cameras. But we get reimbursed on hardening the entrance. Was it 40% or 30%?
It'd probably be closer to 40. Security would be an extra 5, so we're at 35, so it'd be 40%. Plus, we had grants too. We had, on that project, we had the Enduring grant, which was 50, the Rhode Island Foundation was 10.
The town match.
And then, the town had. But then the other capital. So we have some Chromebook upgrades and laptop card upgrades, but we do get a REAP grant, which is the Title II funds that we can use for technology. So we're going to use that to offset these costs for these upgrades here. And then John's got some miscellaneous tech improvements for $17,589 that he'll go over at a little bit later.
I asked Pat earlier that, so the prior superintendent, again, in budget meetings, had tied the tuition money to technology budget. Is that still tied in some way, or are they?
Well, not directly. I mean, we're using that tuition money for supporting the overall operations, not specifically technology, but you can see that our investment in technology is continuing to be required, and, you know, the problem is sometimes when you do a big investment, then it's 4 years later, you're going to replace that. So this is really going to be an ongoing cost that we have to look at from a school standpoint.
And do we know what that 17,589 figure represents beyond the Chromebooks and the laptop? And beyond the new upgrades to the...
Oh, yeah, we've got we've got that detail now.
That's to come.
So the 17,589 includes battery backups for a couple of the closets. 2 of them are aged, and one of the closets has no battery backup. So in an emergency situation, any phones connected back to that closet would shut down. So we definitely need one there. A couple of network switch upgrades. Some of the switches that we have, some of the older models, don't support newer protocols for port security. And that leaves us open, especially with more and more stuff relying on the network, traveling on the network all the time. That leaves us open for a relatively significant risk in attack vector where we could potentially see somebody try to breach the network. It also is a couple of them starting to show their age. We're seeing failing fans on them. We had one of them shut down completely about a month ago, which we're looking at seeing if it's worth replacing the motherboard or not. But those are mostly just aged devices that would need to be replaced. And then area updates. So the commons, this actually was not included because we only discovered it today, but that projector isn't turn on anymore. We're gonna get that solved. A couple of AV upgrades, a lot of the wiring in the walls in this classroom and some of the elementary areas are analog. And those are creating a problem with some of the newer devices that we try to use. So that all of those upgrades combined would wrap up into the 17,500 number.
Thank you.
John, is there any possibility for grant funding for any of the tech upgrades?
We are looking into a couple of them. There's less and less for some of the miscellaneous updates we want to do. Like there aren't a ton of grants right now, at least not that I've come across yet, for replacing wiring into the rooms. They tend to either focus more on the security and the infrastructure side of things, or on student devices. The middle is kind of a gray area, but not as much as eligible for. But we are looking into a couple different opportunities. I've actually, sorry.
The access point.
Oh, yeah. So we leveraged RIDE recently. We talked about this a little at the last meeting. We own wireless, which they should reimburse almost all of for us, and that's going to be a pretty good one. We're actually talking to one of the companies that makes some of the networking hardware, and they've hinted at an offer of kind of doing like a case study around the latest generation of network technology in the schools, in which case they may just give you some of the equipment for free in exchange for the ability to see how it impacts, if it actually makes a difference, upgrading all of that. So we're looking at other opportunities besides just grants too, anywhere we can get more of our money.
Great, thank you.
So we're going to dig into your budget soon, right? All right. But we're going to go line by line here? We're ready to do it? Let's do it. Let's see how far we can get before people start getting upset.
So some of this we've already touched on. On the revenue side, obviously the state aid education, this is the governor's recommendation, 405, 266, you get this in the package, so we have that thing to December.
Yeah.
And the 7265089 is what we're looking at as the town appropriation with the, no, because it's too big. So so that includes the 199 that we're requesting. The 54,000 is 6,000 for the 9 students. Medicaid reimbursement, we're estimating that at 15. That really represents the monies that we get back in any Medicaid reimbursements for students that are in the collaborative. And then we get 10,000 in miscellaneous. That would be, sometimes we get grants, we'll get grants from the coalition and other things. So we've got a number in there budgeted for that. So that gives us the total revenue of 7749355, which basically is going to support the expenses that we have.
God bless you.
And as we can see, the salary numbers, which represent a good portion of the budget, you got 3,463,000. So the 3,268,000 represents all the salary costs that we have currently. So all of the teachers, the TAs, the custodians are all included in this line item here. So again, there were no increases in FTEs with the exception of the additional TA that was added in the current year.
Where in the school is that full-time teacher assistant?
Excuse me?
The new full-time teacher assistant is where in the school?
It's going to be in the, it's going to be split between two grades. It's going to be
Special education. We had 2 new students come in with individualized education plans that require access to an aide. Did just the ones recently. We must give kids what they're required to access the curriculum.
What was the tenfold increase, apparently it's happening this year as well, in tutoring?
Tenfold.
Well, it went from $851 to $9,000.
851 to 9,000.
Yeah, some of that I think was was that the music? We had budgeted 9,000 in there for the tutoring expense.
Why is that used? Remember that in our talks,
Could be a misplaced decimal.
I do, I think that can't be correct. That's usually some,
Sorry.
I'll
Yeah.
admit to that one. yeah.
please do.
There's
That-
also a tutoring line item in the operating expenses. That-
Yeah, the tutoring and the operating expenses is for outside services. So when we have a child that might be in the hospital or something, when we go to
Right.
the outside, that's where that gets charged.
Or a housebound child. but-
This tutoring is generally done by teachers.
I know, could that be our summer, Sonny, your summer?
That's one.
That's-
Yes, so that's,
We better know what that is. That's a big increase.
yeah,
Yeah, I'll look into
that
that.
could be just a typo.
No, it's not a typo.
That's crazy.
And similarly with the stipends that have risen to $44,500 from $20,000, $21,000. I mean, if you look at the two, extracurricular and stipend other, they have doubled.
Remember last year we added the content area coordinators?
Yep.
ELA Math Social Studies, ELA Social Studies, 1 coach coordinator for the content area leadership, math coordinator, science coordinator, and an international baccalaureate coordinator.
And then extracurricular, which
It's on
is
page
also
35.
twofold. I mean, are we paying the athletic coaches that much more? Went from $5,000 to $13,000?
So when you say stipend, is that for an existing teacher? Is that added money for an existing teacher?
there it is.
Yes, I call it salary padding, but it appears in the line as a stipend. And that would be, I believe, for stipend other, I think in every case, those are existing teachers.
But it's money to the teacher, not money for the teacher to go get training.
That's correct. It's over and above, it's over and above,
It's compensation for the teacher.
Compensation for
Generally,
extra.
it's shown as a stipend, but it's not pensionable, that's why it's shown that way.
So is there an additional, when someone becomes a content coordinator or whatever, is there also an additional training?
is it roughly
Yes.
$5,000 a
Somewhere else
position?
in here?
Yep, $5,000 per person, and we have about $26,000 in training from using federal grants for that. For IB training, international baccalaureate training, and also content area coordinators.
So of this 31.5 figure, 26 is funded with grants?
But there's only 10K of grants that show.
None of these are funded with grants.
Right, the federal grants are just, they go up and down, so it's not something that we put into the budget.
Some of the
Sorry, I
professional,
misunderstood. I thought that
some
was
of
what
the
you just
professional development
It's Title
can
II.
be funded through a grant,
Right.
but the stipends themselves
So
are
that,
funded through the general.
is the IB considered professional development? Is that why it falls under that
Yeah,
grant?
we're doing a lot of training, so we can use the professional development
Anything
monies
that's training is
for teachers.
grant.
Right.
Okay. And then the extracurricular athletic stipend.
Those have not changed.
I see
That's on page
438 to
35,
13.
page 35 breakdown.
It's 35.
Well, they did change between 19 and 20.
Thank you. What, is it because there are two two basketball and two lacrosse coaches that went up? Or, I don't even know, it just seems like in a kind of a considerable, to go from, anyway.
Okay, so,
I see the breakdown, I just don't, I can't figure out how people had been compensated before when it was only $5,000.
I think Carolyn said that those are her numbers, if I'm not mistaken. That does not make sense to me. If she couldn't make it,
Did you get rid of the nets? I'm not sure if you got rid of the gross. I thought 50 Cent was the coach for.
No, because there's no feeder. Well, they're the feeder to nothing. There's no place for them to go.
Okay.
So that would be.
all right, here's the breakdown.
That should, before that, everyone has gone across.
I don't know, so
That's
I know that there are two basketball, I think there are two lacrosse.
John, I think that's what it is.
Doesn't matter, does it?
I think the 2019 number,
13, yeah.
it was a placeholder. In actuality, when we started going through all the stipends last year, because of the First Tech Challenge issue, that's when we realized that the actual number ended up being 13, because there were two here, two there, rather than just one. And that was rooted out in our discussions last year when we had to create the MOU for First Tech Challenge. So I think the $5,000 from a few years ago was inaccurate. And when we did an audit of actual coaching stipends that had been provisioned to various sports coaches, because
13,000. Because more kids showed up than expected for the last several years. The teams were large. So I think we determined that 5,400 was a placeholder, but the actual stipends for sports were almost triple.
So that's not an audited figure.
Well, it is an audited figure, but I think some of that salary could be sitting up in that number.
Exactly.
At that point, but
Up there somewhere. So that's between payroll and the business manager, but yes. So I think it's more accurate now. It's not as if more people have been hired. It's a more accurate number.
But these are in the contract, I think, these numbers.
They are, however,
Currently.
the contract just would name one at 2,000 or 2,500 or whatever it was for coaching. And each year for several years there have been two. Does that make sense? That's it. Sonia, Sonia concurs. We did our own internal audit, and so we were actually spending 13 for several years instead of 5,400. It's confusing.
Yeah, I'm confused, I have to say, because if those numbers were somehow absorbed in the line items above, then why wouldn't those have gone down?
Well, yeah, I mean, we get salary increases and things of that nature. I think there was a point where we increased those, the athletic stipends.
I think you increase the number of them rather than the individual payout per coach. Sonia, you would know more than I. The contract would list one basketball coach girls or one basketball coach boys, when in actuality, the school was hiring two for the past several years per sport.
That's true of soccer, basketball,
And lacrosse, yes. So those figures doubled.
So it's only $1,000 of this 1,300, but did we not get rid of all our field hockey stuff because it wasn't an effective code? We were a feeder to nothing. Yeah. So we could eliminate that.
Is that program not in?
We
There is no field hockey.
we threw away our goals or whatever because it was a non-existent program.
It hadn't run in a few years. There's no interest.
I will go with that with Carolyn.
Yep. That was the Carolyn. Yep. There's a lack of interest and there's no program investment.
Oh, it's just the first grouping. Wait till the next one.
This is just a workshop.
It's a workshop, a shop of work. Are we still on this one? You still have questions? The tutoring, we're gonna get some information on that, on the 9,000. And any other questions on the stipends?
Does the substitute, the anticipated substitute figure reflect any advanced knowledge about teacher absenteeism for 2021?
I need a crystal ball for that one, Ed. But just know when there's absenteeism for most PD, that's coming under Title II, the substitutes. So there are a lot of costs that every now and then we get a good deal from the feds.
So the substitutes based on the days that we have recorded last year in the attendance system.
Does substitutes include long-term substitutes, or they are counted differently?
The long-term substitutes are included in that number unless...
That's a high level.
Because last year we had quite a few long-term substitutes, so the number presumably would be higher than it ordinarily would be. Yet in 2021, we're anticipating it to be even higher than it was last year, which should be an anomalously high year.
And hopefully we run in black in that area. It's hard to predict what years our teachers will have babies, or get injured, or their family members are ill, catastrophic events.
What's been included in that number this year in FY '21 is that Carolyn has put in the custodial subs in that line item. It was what was about 4,800 in that line item.
I see that.
Is there a breakdown for what the anticipated custodial substitute figure is?
4,800.
Thank you.
And on page 33.
Thank you.
I mean, these are estimates at this point in time. And obviously, we're not going to be using these substitutes. We don't, but we get a reasonable estimate in there.
Moving on.
So on the fringe benefits, the big one obviously being the medical.
7%?
We have a 7% increase there. And we have obviously co-shares of 20% on the teachers and 18% on the non-certified. So we have, on the healthcare, we have 29 family plans and 9 single plans right now.
Those are pretty solid numbers, huh?
Yeah.
Any questions on those, folks? I'm just gonna try to move it along. Stop me if you need to.
I mean, the other one, we talked about the pension going up, and that's as a result of the PRSRI increasing their percentage. The only other number is this, the workers' comp. And we've had a claim, that's a function of claims, but also increases in salaries, the workers' comp premium. So we're looking at roughly $26,000 in there as workers' comp. That claim, I think, was 2 years ago. We should see that falling off in terms of our evaluation. So I would suspect that we should see something coming down probably in the next year. But we're still working off that. We have to settle out on it.
Is the 521-101 medical premiums, is that what we call health care on the PowerPoint?
That's the 621?
That's just that
Yep.
line item?
Yep.
itself?
Yep.
So isn't 7% 642?
Well, there's also a change in this is computed based on the existing, so there will probably, more or less, I'm leaving the 600 in there as the estimate on the budget, but we might be a little bit less than that depending on the change. And if somebody had switched from family to a single, or maybe they took the buyout instead of the health care. So this number would wind up being somewhat less than this amount here. So the 621 is calculated based on the premium that we're paying now with the 7% increase, and that's included in it. We're also looking at taking that deductible from 250 to 500 to 500 and 1,000. So we'll see some reduction in premium, so that when we add the 7%, we're going to have it on a lower premium number as well. So you have a mix as well as an increase in rates. But that's why you can't do the 7% on the total. 5% increase over last year's. A little bit of a change in the number of hours. This number here, and maybe we'll have John Mobley go through his budget, because this is where he starts to get into some of the contracts that we have on the technical technology side, so.
Yeah, we can wait on that.
You want to wait?
Yeah,
Do it at the end.
that's a web-based, which one you on?
Based instructional program?
Yeah, the web-based instructional program, let's wait. Just power through.
Professional development, this is what Roy was talking about in terms of the training, that 16,000 is included in there for training. There's probably about 6,000 of that in there for technology training. And then 10 in there for curriculum. The audit fees based on proposals that are in there, we're looking at last year, the 25,000. We've got 25 grand in there projected for our legal. 31.5 is the business manager's salary.
Other technical, where's that? Is that you, John?
Yeah, that's me.
That's you, Jonathan? All right, let's wait on that one too.
39,555.
All right, John, we're good with you. I just want to use you for what you are up there for.
So the training, right? We
Yep.
don't want to dwell on it, but we had introduced these content area coordinators, they're all getting a stipend to take on that role. Their old training budget is whatever, $8,000. So 6K of 16 is tech and there's 10, so it's what, there's, $3,000 that goes to training these new content area coordinators. And that's
No, we have Title II money for that. We have federal grant money, that's training. The district apportions funds for professional development, and also we can go into a consolidated resource program dashboard and use federal funds. It's a process, it's an application process, and we apportioned, we transferred some from Title IV to Title II so that we can train all of our teachers in delivering international baccalaureate curriculum. It's about maybe $1,000 per teacher, or maybe $744. And we also portion some of it for our content area coach coordinators and our IB coordinator. Our school side, the operating side, we're using PD money for upgrading our PE, phys ed, and health curriculum this year, and we will also work on that next year. And this is what is, she met this week with the health and PE teacher, and we're starting to upgrade that. There's a consultant that we've folded in. And so the district pays for some of the PD. The Title II grant pays for a lot of it, a lot more. If we leverage that, write it the correct way, and use it, which we did. We did.
why would we show the town, other people's money coming in to enrich the curriculum? Why would we show that federal money on the balance sheet?
And that is a question for the CPA. We do put IDEA in there, our preschool. We don't put Title I, which is our math intervention, which was sweet this year, actually.
So we generally don't show it in this because it doesn't impact the town appropriation.
Yeah.
So we can show that as a separate schedule because all the revenue that we get out of the federal grants is offset by expenditures. So we can show that separate from the unrestricted fund. It has no impact on the overall appropriation.
So we never know how much we're getting from one year to the next, what, sort
Well,
of,
fluctuates.
generally
Yeah,
fluctuates.
We don't have, on the revenues though, on page 19, I don't see a line for those federal grants.
Yeah, because this is just the unrestricted.
That's my point. We've got, there's outside aid coming in that benefits the school, and showing the town that you're actually doing that, I think is a healthy thing.
Right, without those grants, we'd be appropriating more money.
Right.
So in a sense,
So you're adding,
we're saving
adding to
money.
the quality of the program on other people's money, I think that's a nice message to folks.
And have been very intentional about it and focused, and it dovetails with our school improvement plan, so.
Do we have any other sources of revenue that aren't, that don't appear on this revenue?
Excuse me?
Do we have any other sources of revenue that don't appear on this revenue sheet as total revenues?
No. So the grants wind up showing on the financial statements as a special revenue fund, so they're not showing it with the unrestricted. So if you look at the town's financial statements, they're both separately stated. So you have the unrestricted fund, which is generally subject to budgetary restrictions, and then you'll have your statement of revenues, a special revenue fund, which is shown separately.
So of the special revenue funds then, because they're earmarked, we know precisely how much of that $16,000 is Title II money reimbursable?
None of the expenses on this schedule are funded with any federal funds. This is all unrestricted.
So the federal money that you just referenced is over and above. So is that to say that the cost of professional training then is greater than $16,000? Because federal aid is offsetting that?
Yes.
But do we know how much federal aid is offsetting it and what the actual cost of the program is then?
Yes.
How much is it?
Title II is nearly 28,000.
And Title II is
Professional
specifically for professional development? Okay. So the actual professional development figure that we're spending, I don't know what's the matter with my phone, is 16 plus 28. Is that correct?
Right.
So we're spending $44,000 in total on professional development, and we're just not showing 38 of the 28, sorry, of what we're spending.
But if that money goes away, it's not going to be put into the unrestricted fund.
Right. It's
So
unpredictable.
a lot of these grants, you
I understand that,
can't
but
supplant. So
it's still somewhat deceptive because it appears as though we're in fact spending more than twice the amount on professional development that we're showing. We're just not showing it as having any cost. We're not showing it as a source of revenue. We're not showing it as a source of a debit. We're just not showing
And
it.
if the intent is to train these teachers to be able to provide content, and we're paying them stuff to do that, and then that training money goes away, then we're either going to follow through on intent to pay that out of tithe, or we're going to take that to stipend, or what are we going to do, right? So there's a common commitment there. You know, we ought to show, hey, you know, this is our intent to upgrade the delivery of this part of the curriculum. We want to do it this way, we're using other people's money to do it. And, you know, that's the plan of record.
But if that money goes away, that grant goes away,
Then what would you do?
we wouldn't put,
Would you take away that enrichment opportunity, take away that stipend,
Well,
or find another way to deliver?
that
We would find
program, well, that
another-
Yeah,
program.
exactly, right? So it's just nice to show people what that whole picture looks like.
The alternate means of delivering it could be putting $44,000 in that line.
If I might, I did find this document from a couple of years ago. It had the audited amounts for fiscal year 2016 and 17, and those were 44,000 and 39,000.
Because they didn't have any federal grants or because they were showing the total cost?
I don't know, but it does seem like those numbers fall right in line.
No, that had nothing to do with federal grants. There were programs that were put in place for training, and that could have been, that may have been the FOSS kits that we were
Training is
using.
expensive, yes.
So it was training programs that were specifically budgeted for in the unrestricted funds.
And did I understand you to say that some of this Title II money also goes to cover the substitutes that are required for those in-school training programs? So some of the
Not for
28,000,
illnesses or.
yeah, but some of the training is, some of that $28,000 is actually in the substitute?
Not a heck of a lot, a couple of grand, or whatever. But if you think of federal grants come and go, like Title IV may go, you know, safe and healthy schools or whatever, so.
Yeah, the thing is, we don't get the, what they call the CRP, which is the Consolidated Resource Plan from RIDE, which gives us our Title I, Title II, our IDEA preschool, and our Title IV money. So sometime in May, there's an allocation that comes out. We then have to submit our budgets to RIDE for that money. So, and they take 6 months to go through this process to review these things. So there are specific requirements in each of the grants that we have to comply with. And we try to use, you can't supplant, so you can't take out, for example, you want to take salaries out of this line item, charge it to the federal grants, you can't do that. So if you recall earlier on, we were talking about Newport County Regional. Our IDA grant is probably somewhere around 120,000. 94,000 of that goes to offset the tuition that we pay to Newport Regional Collaborative. So we show that net tuition number on our unrestricted fund, and we're using that money. But another requirement of that grant is that we have to spend 15% of that grant on early intervening services. So we're using that to help offset Ray Marcot's salary for early intervening services.
So is it because the grant money schedule doesn't precisely align with the fiscal year schedule that we don't show restricted funds on these budgets, or?
Well, it's not necessarily that it doesn't align, it's just that restricted monies generally are not shown in with the unrestricted, because this is really where it's going to impact the tax rate in the town appropriation.
I get that, but I mean, in terms of even just doing...
I mean, we can show it as a separate column. I can show the revenues and the projected expenditures for those grants on a separate report. But on the financial statements, when these are reported by the auditors, they're looking basically at the unrestricted fund, and they're looking at these numbers, not the total of the unrestricted and the special revenue numbers. Those are shown in an altogether separate fund.
Because those are volatile.
Because they're restricted.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems slightly, from my non-accounting background perspective, slightly less than transparent. And I'm not saying that it's deliberate, but it's unhelpful in a way that it's really difficult to calculate. And I understand that this would also fall out of the RIDE formula for calculating like per pupil cost. But what does this Little Compton School Department actually spend on education? And there are funds that we are spending on education that aren't appearing here because they're restricted funds. So we just don't know what they are or how much. Or someone knows, but we don't see them.
But we're spending federal money on that. We're not spending our money on that.
I understand that, but it's still, and so to the extent that it doesn't comport with the RIDE figure and the way that they calculate per pupil cost, I guess it is a matter of convenience in some way. But it's not to say that we don't expend those funds. We do expend those funds. It just doesn't go to the financial town meeting for an appropriation.
But those are all considered to be supplemental to the budget.
I understand that, but
so if that money goes away, those programs go away.
That's not true, though.
well, but the programs could be funded otherwise.
No, it is true, because if you take a Title I program,
Right.
that Title I program doesn't get funded, we're not going to be funding a teacher for that Title I program.
Math interventionists.
Right.
But we just heard that the professional development in 2016, 2017 was closer to $44,000, which is the actual figure that we're spending this year, without those revenues shown. So the presumption I have to make is that if that money goes away, it just gets lumped into the budget and we're back to $44,000 on this line.
But that was at a point when they were, RIDE had, what were the standards, Sonia, they were talking about when we had those, all the RIDE trainings that we had to put together. Yeah, that was related to the Common Core. So there was a big chunk of training that had to go because of the RIDE changes. So, and who knows with what they're projecting now in terms of the curriculum, whether we may have to look at that as well in terms of additional training. So maybe we're in a position where we can try to use some of the federal money this year.
It's just a coincidence this year.
Right.
So would it be helpful to put another column, like you said, with the restricted figures?
Yeah.
Would that be helpful for the budget committee?
Just think, I mean,
And for Ed, do you think that'd be helpful?
you're trying to, make an investment in improving the curriculum and turning out student performance, right? You found a way to do it that's leveraging federal money. That's a good story, right? But if you don't do it, then the town needs to understand, okay, so what's going to be the fallback plan if the federal money doesn't come through? Are you still going to pay the teacher stipend, to be prepared to deliver the content in this way as a team, and we're just going to cut back somewhere else? Is that your priority? Or are you going to just wipe all of that and go back to, well, we can't improve the curriculum right now? I don't think we take that path. But if you show people, here's the upfront planned cost to upgrade the curriculum delivery, and this is the plan of record, and come to the school committee meetings throughout the year. If things change, we will let you know how we're going to cope. I think that's a much better, more transparent way to show the town how you're intending to improve delivery to the schools.
Yeah, makes
I
sense.
think it's a good news story if you're finding other people's money. If you look back a few years to when Chief Waddell ran for the police department, he was a grant writing machine, and the town was just, absolutely thrilled. And did it affect anybody's wallet? No, but it was all huge value added they found across, all the public safety stuff. You're finding ways to add to the curriculum that's not coming out of the tax base, tell people. But if there's a workaround, then, if that doesn't happen, and that truly is your priority, then you need to tell people through the course of the year how you're going to cope.
So how do we articulate that on this? Another column?
Well, I think with what Ben is saying is that when we do the report that goes in with for the financial town meeting, is probably where we would want to put that in, because you're not going to put it in your education stroke, because you're not going to put that into that number, because that's the number which the tax base is worked on. So.
Well, you have a grants line in there already that you're deducting, so I don't know why that wouldn't be added to the grants line that you're deducting to show you the total expenditure. But it doesn't affect the town appropriation part, but it just does show that the overall cost to its point is higher, but guess what, it's other people's money.
Yeah, so maybe that is the place to put it.
Do you have a sense of a ballpark for restricted revenue for like the, 19, 20 year?
It's not less than
Maybe 200,000?
God.
Yeah, 200 is probably a good number. I was just thinking of the financials.
yeah.
I don't have the financials with me, but
And then Title I, and then Title II and Title IV. That's just a ballpark.
yeah, I mean,
And Title I this year was much higher than last year. There is no way of knowing what we're getting until the end of spring.
But I think what Ben's saying is that's a good, when we write that, and I think I have an old one in here,
Yeah, but
for the town financial meeting.
you can't go to the financial town meeting and say, okay, we're going to spend an additional $200,000 or $300,000 and have that in the educational line still.
And I don't think they want to put in a stroke, I think they want to put
Because
this,
it's havoc with the whole tax rate issue, so I don't have any problems with showing, I can show that.
We can say that our actual spending is 3% higher than this figure, that is reflected in this figure, because it doesn't account for federal grant money that, we received to pay for certain of the programs that we're implementing in 2019.
Yeah, but that's not how they historically look at it.
Right.
I understand that, but I think that what he's suggesting is that that's part of the problem, is that
That's one of the problems.
well, it's among the problems, that it hasn't been included. I mean, it is a surprise to me to discover it now, 4 years into a term, that we have $250,000 in money that's coming in.
But the town has a lot of grants as well, and they come from the same way. They don't go into their unrestricted, so you're not seeing the total amount spent.
Well, I think we should go, the town council maybe ought to consider that as well. But it is, that's an appreciable sum.
It is, and I don't think it was by design. Everyone knows that we have Title I programs, math, and trying to get their Title I letters.
I presume that it was incorporated into the figures that we're seeing here.
No.
But it isn't.
Can it be added to the, don't we do a little narrative?
that's what I was
Of
saying.
how we leverage outside funding?
And
Maybe
include,
consider that when you write that.
and include a rough estimate of how much money goes into our school that we're not accounting
Yeah,
for?
well, we know exactly how much the number is for 19. We know what the budget is for 20. We can estimate what we're going to do for 21, and we can basically show our unrestricted costs, our special revenue costs, and a total. So now you're going to see your total revenues, which includes your grants, and you're going to see your total expenditures broken up. So the presentation is simple, and we can budget that way going forward. It's when we bring it into the town side, and they're using that to base the tax increases on. We just got to be careful how it's presented, that's all. Because when we give them the budget, this budget, we're giving them what our total expenditures are and what our total appropriation request is from the town. So we're saying, okay, our total expenditures are 7.7 million, and the appropriation we're looking for is 7,000,001.
Roger, do you, from someone that sits on the other side of the gym, do you think it's beneficial to let people know at the town financial meeting how much money and grants is gathered? Do you think that is something that some people that think the school maybe spends too much money would like to know and would be helpful in decision making?
I don't think it hurts at all to put that information in the report, in the mail, so long as it's properly worded, so people understand what exactly it is, and that it's not included in the town appropriation.
Above and beyond.
You couldn't combine it, because then you would say, okay, there are certain expenditures in there that unless we get the revenue, we're not going to spend this money.
Right.
So you want the readers to know that, or they say, okay, well, let's cut this practice development or professional development line item. Okay, well, we cut that, and we have to take the revenue out. So it's not as if you're going to get some benefit from it, so. But we can work on a presentation.
But, we are spending an extra $1,000 roughly, because that's all within, none of that restricted money is going to Portsmouth, correct? It's all staying within this building?
Yes.
So it's roughly, $1,000 per pupil in this building that are receiving.
Some of it's going to the collaborative, the new part of reading.
Right.
The
Okay.
IDA,
He means the
portion of the IDA.
Title II,
Sorry,
Title IV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think how this came to be is when we wanted to launch the International Baccalaureate, it fit perfectly in what Title II was requiring, and that changes as well. And when we wanted to add some content area coordination, it also fit perfectly with that particular. And then with the state schools money, Title IV, which is new and may end, the youth mental health first aid training that we added this year, the CPI training that we added this year, the restorative practices training for every staff member that we added, it just fit perfectly there. So, so Title IV could be, it's only the past few years that has been part of the consolidated federal grant process. So it's not anything we can ever count on.
So should we power through a little bit further here? And we're going to divide the apple this later.
Sorry, no, I'll move along.
So on the document
This
services,
is what we're here for.
it wasn't a big increase. As you noticed, I've taken down some changes on the telephone that reclassified to lease expense. So that was a reduction. The HVAC, because of the fact of putting in new boilers, I took that down to 7,500, but we know what that number going to be. We had the whiteboard leases that came out, that's why the 2014 down to 14. And a little bit of an increase in our fire alarm services. And so we're showing something less than last year's budget. On the purchase services, which is the big items here, a large area of the salaries, is we have the busing costs in there, which has the 5% increase there, 488.1. The property and casualty insurance, which is at 30. We won't get that number until probably sometime in June. This is the tuition for Portsmouth High School. So if you look at page 40, you can see the calculation for that number, which is based on the 112 students. And on page 41 is the CTE program calculation. And on page 42 is the special education process. And the Newport County Regional should be in there as well. Showed that on the slide, and that's this 271, which is after the funds for the reduction of the IDEA funds. That brings us to 2,185,600 versus 2,203,529, our original budget, and it's a little bit up from what our projection would be, which is 2,111,000.
Any questions about that batch committee?
The next category is we know this on the PowerPoint. It says the utilities in it as the general education supplies and the curriculum expenditures as well. So we're looking at a little bit of an increase over budget and over actual of 256.5. Some of that is an increase on the supplies where we added the $5,000 for the van that we were funding. Differently, we got the increase in the electricity from 69 to 84. We're projected to be at 75 at the end of the year. And there's a line item there for computer supplies, which John's taking in his budget, so we'll go over that. And we've already went over the capital improvements. John will go through the ones in his budget, but obviously the camera One thing I do have to add, and it goes in here, is the baccalaureate fees, which are $9,500 a year. I missed that one, so that's gotta go in there, but maybe I've got 9,000 less in tutoring.
Maybe you do. Any questions on that one?
We're on 24. Are we going to cover 57,309 and 57,311 with Jonathan? Okay.
Yep, so you want to go through your...
Are you all done with that? That's you? That's it? All right, Jonathan, you're up, buddy boy. You want to reference a page, I think that would be helpful to us if you're going to talk about, you know.
I just want the same,
Yeah, you can tell what page, whatever.
45?
45 to 47.
45 to 47 is John?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, John.
Do you have those, Jeff?
Let me sit here, or should I go? So, he's on 45, so 53 to 22 is the person that starts out, but
Yes.
basic instructional, supplemental instructional programs.
So do we want that up there for?
Yeah, sorry.
For Mr. Lord?
I always think of Roger Lord.
I am, he's my buddy.
Granddaughter you never had. So you hang around enough?
Something about loving me out there.
So, 53 through 22 is web-based supplemental instructional programs. Two new additions that happened as a result of a RIDE mandate this year. We have to have software to track certain ILP requirements, career readiness, social emotional learning, stuff like that for grades 6 through 8. So that was not optional, so you'll find that in there. And we renegotiated a couple of these, we're going to do a few others, so some of the dollar amounts may have changed a little bit, but we save money in one basis to this. So, line item 1, 2, 3 are all online portals that students log into that are for different assessment and, sorry, I'm blanking on instruction. That was a better word for that. Anyways, they're all different assessment tools that the students can use, do assignments, teachers get the analytics from, and they're all structured for that. Of which those are some of the bigger line items. As you can see, Achieve is our biggest one at just about $9 grand.
So can I just stop at Achieve for a second?
Yep.
I don't see my superintendent here, so I will go to my principal. Is this program working?
I actually do think that it's been responsible for some gains and some nonfiction reading skills, but we'll definitely at the end of this year review where we stand and decide if it's worth that monetary.
So my understanding is we can cut it loose, it's just a yearly subscription.
It is an annual plan.
Annual, there you go. And, do we have an alternative to it if we want to cut it loose? Have we looked into that?
We would have to do some exploring.
I would suggest we explore, before we obviously can cut it loose. And maybe that's something you could bring to the school committee. Because I'm not, I don't think Achieve 3000 is, I'm sure it's fine. My kids went through here. I don't think it was anything that is gangbusters. And so I know we've had it for a while. And maybe it's time that we look at something else. At least look at it. So that's just my own opinion on Achieve 3000.
So as a kind of universal aside to almost everything in this and in one of the other sections, we, meaning the school, is forming a committee to speak with teachers on a regular basis about the effectiveness and the use of these programs in the classroom. So that's going to happen throughout the remainder of the year. But I'm also doing some internal kind of auditing and analytics around how often these tools are used and stuff like that. So we'll have a better idea, or at least I will have a better idea as far as what we can support and levels of use, and that hopefully in turn will allow people like Sonia to make a better decision from
trust Sonia and the instructional leadership team to make these decisions.
And-
They are meeting regularly, and they are reviewing not just the curriculum, but all of the resources, technology, et cetera, that are used. So,
My one question is that's specific to Achieve 3000 is that I know that we pay an annual subscription to it, but one of the complaints that my kids have is like the news articles will be the same from 2016. So it seems as though the content for Achieve 3000 is not updated, but we're charged annually
They do
for.
update it, even if the train, part of that subscription fee is the trainer comes up and works with us, and that happened recently. So they do a substantial amount of added materials. They keep the old materials, so yes, you're still seeing the old materials, but they are adding. I couldn't give you the figure on how many, but there are, thousands of articles added each year.
One of the things they did mention in the training too, and from what I've seen in the past, is they have been putting more work as of recently into the product to refine it and to add more relevant, newer content. I think they mentioned that during our training, and it does appear to be that they're putting a lot of effort into refining it as a good piece of software. I haven't heard any specific complaints about it, but again, I think that a committee of teachers are actually using this every day to inform that is going to be really beneficial.
Might be helpful, again, I'm just talking, I'm sorry, that maybe someone from Achieve 3000 can come down here and gives a little presentation on what we've been buying in the past 4 years, because they did when we first got it, and I'd be interested to see how they've improved since then. I mean, for $8,700, I'd like to have somebody come here and tell me how wonderful their program is. Jenna?
Yeah, I must be slow, but I'm not getting why our web-based programs are doubling the cost of them.
Well, so some of the costs in here, I did move out of another budget, and you'll find that one or two of the web-based programs ended up in software. That was me, however. There were a couple of these things that are instructional programs, first and foremost, or solely, that I think in the past maybe we just thrown into the wrong bucket.
So it's just different buckets?
Yeah, so I reordered a couple of things, and they definitely, these are now all instructional programs rather than some data management and other types of software that were in there before, and vice versa. The software category had a couple instructional programs and not enough of the IT infrastructure background stuff.
iReady?
iReady is math and reading assessments and practice training for students as well as reporting features for the teachers.
That's running well, Sonia?
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
it's an excellent program.
What was the rationale that implemented board docs rather than, is it something that the Rhode Island Secretary of State required, or?
It's more a management system for ensuring that everything's tracked and versioned and maintained in a sole repository with privileged access. So when it comes to policy management and agendas, meetings, any kind of stuff like that, historical committee, archives, documents, video, all of that gets put into board docs and organized for you, and it can structure all of those things. So like, we're actually working on getting the rest of the policy stuff all ready for board docs. Mariah and Carolyn put a lot of work into that.
And the videos, everything.
Yeah, the videos now.
Videos are now there in Word docs, Roger.
But the big benefit there is that you have one source of record that you go to. Each individual person on a committee or involved can go in, suggest their changes. You can view a summary of changes, accept and track them, finalize a policy, and publish it to a public portal where all that history and information is maintained. All of that actually doing any of that work. That offloads all of the management.
And if at some future point we decided not to use board docs, who actually owns the content that we've uploaded to board docs? Do we have to get that out of board docs somehow and then migrate it over to something else, or how does that work?
I believe they actually have the ability for us to download a backup of that on a regular basis, as well as extract and finalize copies of PDF bound versions of all the school policies and civic procedures, say. Other than that, yeah, we have the ability to go in and pull it out anytime we want to.
Do we have bound copies of everything that gets uploaded to board docs that we do, so we have a backup? somewhere that isn't.
Are you close to having everything up there, 100% of what?
We have everything for all meetings
Yes.
out there, absolutely. As far as the policies go, we have everything
Right.
compiled right now, and we're at a point where I think we're ready to push it off to them. They did say that there would be a lag time, it would be a month or maybe a little bit longer before they actually are ready for us to use their program. But that will be.
I do think on the school website that it would be helpful if some explanation were given for what board docs is. I mean, if I were a parent who were just looking for information on school committee minutes, et cetera, it would not be self-evident to me that I would go to board docs. It just says board docs and it's not
We
really.
can get about it, making it a little bit more obvious. I think Mariah somewhat recently added a nice header across the top of the school committee videos and artifacts page, and you're going to say all the minutes and agendas will now be located in board docs. So
Yes, that is.
Yeah,
So that definitely helps.
Page has been updated.
And we're looking at options for the website too at this point. It's a nice website and everything, but there are probably cheaper, newer, better companies that can do all that for us. Will allow us to have the flexibility to make nicer things like that.
So board docs is not in this grouping, is it?
Board docs?
Yeah, it is a
It's the
lot.
next page.
Yeah, further down. In the-
It centralizes everything.
On this
Yeah,
page.
it's in there.
On that page.
Gives the meeting of the United Teachers.
Under 50.
So we're on to the next page?
Yeah, go ahead. Training.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, there's a couple other pieces of software in there, curriculum-based stuff, special education, content banks, that kind of thing. Technology training, so that's the.
board docs. Sorry.
Last year for on-site, we kept that the same. A little bit of increase for online training, mostly for phishing and email attack-based awareness. There are a lot of phishing emails. You may have seen those in your inboxes, pretending to be John or somebody else. And there are actually companies out there that will allow you that will monitor your email to help mitigate that stuff, but allow you to deliberately send out malicious emails, test malicious emails, to see how your users do. And then you, based on the kind of vulnerabilities that they fall victim to, stuff like that, you can actually come with targeted training for things exactly that they would look out for. Best practices when attaching documents to email, receiving email that looks suspicious, data security around dealing with whatever flash drives, network shares, all that stuff. Whatever needs to be done, it does a good job of pointing that out and then actually giving you a bunch of modules that they can go in online, take, read assessments of DAC to see how they did and whether or not they actually did the training. It's very valuable. And I want to say, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I think it was a 60% decline in people falling victim to like phishing and whaling emails, where somebody pretends to be somebody else at the company getting information from you. It's significant enough that we get enough of those emails, but I definitely think it's worth doing. That's about it. I'll change it otherwise. So 53502 is other technical services. This is mostly the bucket that
Board docs.
we pay musical line items with. But this is where the rest of it goes. Anything that is required for the management of the school, but not necessarily an educational application for the student, or background infrastructure stuff is all in here for the most part. So Aspen is our SIS, can't really go anywhere. Frontline, used for absence management and professional development tracking.
The absence, that's annual.
Yes. Yeah, these are all annual services.
So we're going to pay for substitutes and pay annually to track them.
Well, it doesn't just track substitutes, it also tracks, it also tracks all the information about, well, not all, but a lot of the information about all of our employees, finds substitutes for them, and it also does all the PD tracking. All the professional growth stuff is monitored there, and that is a state requirement that we track that as well.
And is that also a system for evaluation?
Yes. All right.
My learning plan is also folded into that, and that is the appraisal dashboard for all of our teachers and principal what gets evaluated within that as well.
So that we actually get a fair amount of benefit out of that plan, and that $2,300 is It's a bit, but it offloads a lot of what would otherwise be manually.
I think all the school
data.
systems use that one around here.
Yeah, it's
That's been
definitely
around for
very
about
popular.
15 years or so.
Speaking of other things that all the schools use, NutriKids is for our lunch program. TINET is the document management system for professional, for special ed services. LobbyGuard is the screen out in the library, main office. You can deal with it in a long day. Where you scan your ID or type in your name and it does the background check on you when you come in. That's about $450 a year. RideLink is our connection to the library. Board Docs. There we go. We talked about that one.
That was on our own page, sorry.
Parent Square is a replacement for Blackboard Connect 5, but it also adds a number of new features, including communication management and tracking. It'll do all the emergency outreach, but also regular notifications, so attendance letters, grade subscriptions, daily attendance even, all that kind of stuff gets routed through Parent Square, whereas an interactive system, that parents would actually get a message. Your kid is absent today, they scored so much on the test, whatever happens to be, and they are allowed to respond back to it, and the main office receives that at the same time. It also manages all of your internal and external communications, logs them, archives them, preserves them community year, so you have a record of every newsletter that's sent home by every teacher, all the kinds of parent outreach, all that stuff is preserved.
So Parent Square, that's interesting. Is that, we use that a lot?
We're just transitioning.
We're learning.
What's the cost of that relative to Blackboard Connect?
2,300 Blackboard Connect, I believe, this year to renew was about 1,000.
Horrible.
But it doesn't have any of the other.
This is our first year doing it, and it was implemented in September?
Yeah, we're just getting completely set up and functional now. We're starting to download features and content center, how to do that.
You'll be hearing more.
So teachers will be able to contact parents in this.
And that's one of the things we talked about, figuring out how we can move that communication to parents with.
So just to give you an example, pretty much all the teachers send out a newsletter on Fridays, right?
Well, it depends on the teacher.
Okay, so once a week at least, roughly, teachers send out a newsletter. Now this newsletter could be an email, it could be a Google Doc, it could be an Aspen email blast, it could be a Google Doc shared to a public link, pasted into an email with a couple pictures next to it. There's a lot of inconsistency in there. And then we just don't have a way to track all that. If we knew it was all going through one channel, maybe, but past that, we have no way to monitor or see what's happening. We don't actually have that much visibility into the communication coming out of this building. So that unlocks a lot of that. It also just fixes a bunch of problems that Blackboard had where they don't play nice with all of our data exports, and it creates a lot of other issues. That's Parent Square.
Will Aspen then just be reduced to kind of grade record keeping? Is that what it will?
Aspen is, in a way, the source of record for all things. So your student information system maintains all your grades, maintains the grade book, the application that teachers can actually use to assign assignments, receive assignments. It contains your special education, your staffing modules. It can track pretty much any kind of information. It's just a database that you can throw anything into. I mean, past that, we use it to track conduct and discipline. We use it to track.
We've also activated the
Nursing.
scheduling, online scheduling.
We do all of our scheduling in there, so the computer
The
actually.
logistical module was also activated this year.
Yeah.
We're leveraging that at all.
It
Yeah, I
now is the
remember.
relay between the Department of Education for all the daily reports that we have to do, all that
That all goes
information
up
exported from Aspen.
overnight, every night.
So it's kind of the main data warehouse, if you would, for all the people data that we have. Thank you.
The scheduling module has been a game changer in school.
So Parent Square, School Spring is the job posting thingy. And help desk workflow management software. I put this in there as a line item. We're still evaluating a couple options. This would be something that would be newer as well. There isn't really a ticketing or service desk type system here at all, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It feels very homey, community-based. But that means there's no real central way to track work. So like how many work tickets did I do in the past year? Or many times has somebody made a maintenance request or use of facilities, fill out a use of facilities form, but whatever that happens to be, there is no centralized process for this. It seems like they're all just paper forms. Past that, to keep organized on an IT department basis in the facilities, everybody else would take use of that. We just have nothing. I mean, it's pretty much email and whatever each individual department comes up with. So that'll be a system that allows us to create forms to kick off processes that would then track things. So the obvious ones are when you have a computer problem, you put in a ticket and somebody shows up right away to help you. We can wrap other things into a lot of those tools too, though. So another example is a building use form could actually be a page that is typed into on a website. When you click a button, that form is automatically sent to the main office, to the principal for approval, to the maintenance director, to the rec center if that's necessary. At each stage, an email is sent and a log is kept of who approved it and when, or who denied it and why. And at the end of it all, it'll generate you a really nice PDF that looks like your school letterhead with the actual form content filled out and a nice digital signature. And at every step along this way, you get to track those things. You have one dashboard to log into and you can see what happens there. So I threw it in there because I think that'll be a real benefit and actually save a lot of person hours and back and forth redundant emails, that kind of
Will
stuff.
that be on the town side also, you would use it?
Yeah, that is definitely something we're looking for.
So that would let us know, where you are in helping with the town or the safety or here. How many tickets where you're getting pulled.
Actually, yeah, that would do a very good job of
great
being able to kind of identify where the time is spent and on what types of problems.
Don't I remember Bob Power having a ticket system with Paul Benjamin?
I do remember a ticket system. I can't.
So there is a bit of a ticketing system now, which we still do use, some people do. It's a Google form that just goes into an email. So it's a little bit more convenient and structured than just sending an email, but at the end of the day, it turns into an email, which is up to one person to follow up on and manually coordinate between other people. There is no dashboard to go back to and look at. There is no analytics to run on anything. You can't tell time to take a completion from creation. There is no method for that, really.
Is the presumption then that the town would also be using this, and so that's what would keep track of Bill Moore or whomever would be on the town's end in terms of the service sharing
We've
agreement?
talked about service sharing and doing things that can be mutually beneficial like that. We don't have a plan to do so yet, but I've spoken with a couple people over at Town Hall who are looking and interested in doing things like this. Anything we can do to combine services and share the cost of them, save some money, make things more efficient. They are very open to that, definitely. So that is other technical services. So device repairs, that's an easy one. Stuff happens. That makes it cool. Although I will say, this is the best school I've ever spent for that. They are so good at everything. Accidents happen, that always does, but they are, all the teachers take great care of stuff. The students are like so careful with most of it. It's amazing.
It is very different from other schools in that respect.
It's a credit to just the school, the teachers, the community, everything. Like nobody really takes care of things that aren't there. So and I do think Will Johnson does a pretty good job.
I knew there was something good to talk about. Huh, Roger?
It's extraordinarily good. There might be a missing key
Got it.
or something.
Got it.
That's it.
It's on the wall.
Supplies and equipment, so this is all sorts of fun stuff. Mostly comes down to smaller purchases that end up throughout the year, and back-end equipment, testing, meters, gappers tape, cabling, any kind of stuff that we need that would be expendable batteries. Actually, not so much anymore. Camera system, we just talked about that a little bit. Obviously, it came in a little less at our previous meeting, but we built a little extra, and they went and added some new cameras, so that turned out pretty well. Technology, hardware. So the first two are pretty straightforward. We have a certain number of devices, and modern devices at least only last a certain number of years. I'm doing a bit of an evaluation to figure out exactly what the ideal cycle is, but the average is somewhere between 3 and 4 years you hold onto a device. At the end of that period, you sell it for whatever scrap value it's worth, and you go out and buy these new devices. You never end up with something so old it becomes totally worthless. So we are at a point where over the next couple of years, we're going to have to upgrade a number of carts to establish either a 3 or 4 year cycle. 30 devices for Chromebooks for next year, and 30 devices for the Windows 10 laptop carts. Carts, I should say, that's the one in the library. No, rather, that's the one in the computer science room. Those are going to be replaced. The Google Chromebooks will actually be end of life after next year, and they will no longer receive updates or work with newer services. So that's not really so much an option. The Windows 10 laptop cart, though, is definitely starting to feel its age as well. I believe those are just over 4 years old, but they were already 2 model years old, I believe, when they were purchased. So it's running towards the end of its usable life at that point. We are in the middle of contacting a couple of companies to look for buyback quotes, to see how much we can get back on all those to turn into new devices. Faculty staff devices will be part of a series of rolling upgrades as well. We've been doing a little bit of an analysis, and we're going to go out and start doing some testing and getting feedback as to what device that looks like. But the computers that are currently in most classrooms, I would say on average are 8 to 10 years old. Those are, and they've been upgraded over time. They have newer video drives, more memory, that kind of stuff. But they are really starting to struggle and experience mechanical or electrical component failure. So this would be to help bring those up to date. Interactive displays, we're still doing a little bit of work on figuring out exactly what this is. You probably a 4-year lease, which is what John was saying, would make the most sense. Classroom and common area updates, that was actually these last 3 we talked about before, the 5400, 7992, and the 4197 comprise the extra 15,552-ish. That other breakout not before we already talked about.
I just asked, going back to line 57309, and I couldn't find the similar figure, but you have a figure of, it's on page 24, there's a figure of $35,600, which I don't see, I don't know what that is in terms of, page 24. 24, sorry.
This one?
Yeah, so that same line, 57309, the figure is $35,600. But I don't, I'm trying to figure out where that fits into this breakout.
It's not tight. Teachers take care of stuff like. How do you trigger that? It's impressive.
I think that's the least.
Near the school, I think.
Does the lease amount 35,600?
Yeah, I just don't,
Is that 2 payments?
I don't know. I mean, it has me wondering why that line wouldn't be 106,089 on page 24.
Well, we have the lease, the 50,000 is going to be put under a lease.
Breaking it up.
So that the 50,000 is not going to represent the full cost, that's the full cost, but we're going to pay for it.
Well, that was a subsequent question, but that still doesn't get you down to 35,600 if you subtract the 50, does it?
No, you have to subtract the...
Reprint, actually, right?
Yeah, we have the reprint. So we're going to cover the 9,000.
That was like 17,000 if that was,
The 9,000 and the 13,500 is going to be covered by the reprint. The first two.
So, all right, work with me here. So we're counting 18 rather than 50? Because that would be the, okay.
Yeah.
18 rather than 15, we get rid of the REAP grant.
And then the,
22.
I can't see where that, I'm gonna go back.
About
Does that work out to be 35,600 when you take those out from the 106 figure? I just can't, I was trying to figure out where,
Well, I expect that was the faculty staff.
Yeah, it comes out to about, I mean, by my rough mental math, that ends up being like 37 grand.
okay. Thank you.
And I got I found the spreadsheet in front of me, it's a number. But yeah, so that is a little confusing, but I should update that in my own spreadsheet, because that definitely.
It's also somewhat confusing because I presume that the REAP grant is restricted,
Yes, that's fair.
Well,
but yeah, it's included.
Do you want your trash? Thank you.
well, no, it's not included here, because that's not, it's taken out of the 57,309 on the unrestricted fund.
It's taken out of the 57,309 and the unrestricted,
Yeah,
but we're
it's taken
arriving
out.
at a figure
It's taken
before
out.
that was
It's taken out.
35 that includes the REAP deduction.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that number should have read about $50,000, but when you subtract the REAP grant, it ends up being about 35.
No, I get that, but it doesn't, it seems inconsistent because we're not showing restricted funds in other areas where we just had that discussion.
We're not showing the funds, we're taking the expense out. We're taking the first two expenditures out. So so account 57,309 excludes those expenditures for.
But we're showing them as expenses,
So I am
unlike in
showing
the
that
Title
on-
II
on
program.
my budget sheet.
He's showing on his budget.
But this is what I work off of to project out. So I'm realizing the actual expenses, the actual purchase orders that I will end up having to write and reconcile everything back to. So in my world, I'll end up seeing these expenses. By the time we end up at the bottom over here, though, that $23,000 come back out. You can see the reports down there.
So, yeah.
So I'll show that.
Yeah,
Well, I'll
That's
show
a
that.
much more helpful way to do it than,
The REAP grant changes every year too.
First down.
Oh, we have to apply for it.
Right.
That's good to know, though. I'm still kind of hodgepodging together pre-existing myself and Paul's into one thing. So I will kind of keep that in mind as we work with that going forward. So that, you're good with 309 right now? So technology software, this one is pretty straightforward for the most part. Microsoft licensing, which has gone up a little bit. Antivirus and internet security is up for renewal this year. That comes out to about $2,500, but we're looking at options to reduce that. I certainly expect we'll be able to reduce that a bit. This was our direct renewal quote. HP Foundation support, I actually decided to take this out. We did a little bit of an analysis on what it would cost us versus getting cost of replacement parts or anything like that, and it just doesn't really seem to be worth paying for at this point in time. VMware annual support runs on a bunch of the physical servers downstairs and hosts a lot of the domain controllers, application servers, and stuff like that that power everything here. ClassLink is a single sign-on connector that allows you to tie local storage, cloud storage, and a bunch of different apps and services together, so you can use one login to truly log into any website. So that's something that we're looking into piloting for the students. And then the MDM is for Apple device management, so Macs, iPads, iPhones, anything like that. Web hosting is exactly what it sounds like. I've taken out the other piece of Blackboard that does not connect 5. The web hosting, you'll notice, is just completely gone. I expect that we should be able to save a lot of money if we get rid of the current website. It will mean redesigning the website, or at least recreating the existing website. But that's something we can probably do in-house for very little time, almost no money. So I'm confident we can save at least $2,000 a year from that. And the actual expense of running like a website is in the $5 a month range, it's nothing major. And then same thing for storage, we pay Barracuda, I don't remember the number off the top of my head since I deleted it, but a couple $1,000s for storage, mostly because they give us a really shiny box that goes downstairs and manages a lot of that for us. We get rid of the box and we upload everything directly to the data center that they use anyways, and we can cut them out as being the middleman. Our storage goes from somewhere around $3,000 a year to about $720 a year. And software.
Pretty impressive job.
Can I just, having belabored far too many points already,
No,
if
that's
you
what
would
we're here for.
indulge me, please.
That's what we're here for.
So I should infer that we have 101 Apple devices?
Correct.
What would those be? Do we have 101 iPads? And at this point, they are limited to K through 2? Is that what I understand from looking through this?
That seems about right.
Grade 2, I think
so.
grade 3 has, not
Three
has
has-
a card. Grade 3 kind of goes back and forth between iPads and Chromebooks, depending on.
How many students do we have that are in K through 2? We can't have do we have 101 students in K through 2?
50-something. Almost 60.
Probably somewhere in the 60s. But that also includes enough devices in each classroom or on each cart to be able to cover everybody. So there are different situations where, like, especially I think those are 2 different class sizes. So maybe the cart that's in the room that only has 8 kids all day, the actual number, needs to be able to accommodate up to 13 kids in that room. When they decide to take the cart somewhere else. So there is a little bit of overlap, definitely. There are also still a couple other iPads and devices. A few of those are phones and stuff like that that we have on FirstNet. So there are a couple of ones, but the vast majority of them are iPads. Like, I would say probably 90 of those are iPads.
And finally, is there any sort of like sustainability in technology? When we have these buyback programs, are we just sending them to a third world country and dumping them in a pile?
It depends on the buyback program and manufacturer originally and a couple other things. Apple's really good about it now. If they don't always do buyback, but they always do recycling, and they'll always buy back off the resellers that do it. So they recycle like 90+% of everything that goes back out there. Some of the older junkier hardware that just gets sent off for scrap probably gets picked through, and most of that is still recycled at this point. There's a fair amount of value in that stuff, and a fair amount of precious metals and stuff like that in those computer circuit boards. So every vendor, at least the ones that we've talked to, will actually give you like a certificate of destruction to prove that it was destroyed or scrapped or whatever happened to it, along with whatever happened to your data. If there were hard drives that went with it, they'll prove that that was securely destroyed and all that. But they'll actually include a lot of breakdowns about where it ends up going. I don't know the percentages for everybody, but most stuff in the tech world ends up going off to some kind of recycling company nowadays. But I can find out more if you're interested.
I'm just curious. Every 3 years we're
No, it is-
contributing to a pile
It is definitely a lot.
in some.
Pretty serious work.
Is it Jonathan?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I just compliment you on awesome work, the level of detail, your conscientious approach to this, and really explaining things so we understand what you're talking about. A magnificent job, really. Congratulations.
That is what we're here
Here, here.
Yeah, we'll keep working on it, we'll keep chipping away at it, John, but it's good work.
I stole this from other John.
for. Close to applause level, we're not quite. So Superintendent, did you have any additions to the budget that I missed on?
I increased the IB coordinator stipend from 3,000 to 5,000. We talked about last year. This year would just be an application phase and coordination phase, and she's done a lot of work. I increased the 8th grade advisor stipend because it had not been increased in years and years, and it's more than an 8th grade advisorship. It's camping trip and Washington DC trip and prom, well, semi-fall, graduation,
How much was that?
That's
I
about
missed
it.
it.
It was 1,600, we went up to 2,000 for that.
Well, I've got a four-letter word that I'm concerned about here, that I haven't heard. I don't know where it is. Maybe it's already in one of these. It's the band.
We did discuss that. We have added $5,000. About 15 years ago, the previous band director approached the LCEF for some funding. And we don't know how this happened. Carolyn Sedgwick remembers it because she was a founding member of the LCEF. And it was supposed to be sort of a stopgap fix. And somehow the LCEF absorbed nearly 100% of the band program's operating expenses. I was made aware of that in the fall when Nicholas Kirby started, and he did an audit of the instruments, which instruments needed tweaking at Symphony Music in Dartmouth, and realized that so many were beyond repair. Sort of patch jobs were done. Discussed it with John back then, and I said we need a placeholder. And discussed with Mr. Kirby and Mrs. Webb. So to thank you to the LCEF for sustaining the program all these years, and promise that I would remediate past practice of shifting some of the operating expenses to a foundation that's supposed to be supporting enrichment. And this is part of our instructional program, band program. We need to bear those costs. So that is an addition. We also added $2,000 for First Tech Challenge. That was never in the budget. It was a wonderful program offered a few years ago during the school day, and it somehow never made it into the budget. LCEF was kind enough to fund that this year. I also wrote a grant for a couple of $1,000, so we did get to float that. And we will continue to write grants for the equipment component that we are funding on the district side, school side, the stipend.
Yeah, so the band is a concern of mine, and it has been since Mr. Nicken left. My understanding, Mr. Nicken would go to this place in Dartmouth, and they would have a deal there. He would fix them and patchwork it together. And then he would give the bill over to the LCF, and they would pay for it. That's my understanding of it.
Mine too.
So as Nicken left, the new guy went over, and they said, you know what, these instruments are beyond repair.
They really are.
So you've got kids that can't even play all the notes on these things. You've got kids quitting because they can't play these instruments. And so I don't know, if we want to support this band program, I think we need to figure out more than just $5,000 just to throw at it. I know we have a new person here.
That's the figure he gave to me. Yeah.
And I think he's, how many fifths is he?
2/5.
So if you get a 2/5 person, maybe we need a 3/5 person or a 4/5 person. I don't know how
We've discussed that.
So I don't know if he's wonderful or not wonderful. I mean, obviously, we're not here to discuss that. I have no idea what he is, okay? So you don't want to increase someone that you don't feel is, you want to have around for 4/5. I'm not talking about him. I'm just saying, if you're trying to build a band program, you need someone energetic, you need someone that's all in. And if we need to increase him, obviously we have to increase our instruments because the kids can't even play the notes on them.
Mrs. Whip and I did discuss his position, that position.
Yeah.
I will let her speak on this particular.
So, it's budget season. I'm looking as the chair for a report on the band. From what I understand, it's not good. Instrumentally.
I think it's music.
You've got someone who's only here 2/5. I mean, that's got to be a strain on him. Whoever's in that position, that's not going to be easy. So, I mean, I'd like to get an assessment of that as we go through the next few weeks. What a solid number is, because the band here has a wonderful history, and I hate to see it in a disarray like it is. That's just from my speaking. I only have one vote, but I just don't want to throw money at it. I want to see you guys come back to me with more of a plan than $5,000 that he suggests. I mean, an inventory, what his maybe a 2 to 3 year plan is that he has to build this program up. If he's here more than 2/5 and he can convince us, maybe we should make him 3/5 or 4/5, whatever. I don't know how anybody else feels about it, but I think
I
it's
think
pretty
that's a
important.
decision that the principal needs to chew on for a bit, and there are only so many periods in the day that kids can take classes, and that entered into our discussions. We are willing to keep those discussions open about that position.
If we could have something for the next meeting on that, that would be good.
What was that?
Our next meeting, Mariah, is the 8th, 9th?
Depends on what kind of meeting.
Next school committee meeting?
The next school committee meeting is on the February 12th.
12.
It's a Wednesday evening. We have not said.
There may be
when
some
that-
other meetings before that, sure.
Yeah, but I think the second budget workshop. is
Second
also-
budget workshop will be then too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be a scaled down version of what we see here, unless there's a bunch of people here, then we'll have to do a full one. But we have on tape, going through all the lines.
Can I ask one last
Sure, go
question
ahead.
before we go? I'm just
It might
curious
not be
about
the last.
I've never seen these before. I thank you actually for putting together such a thorough presentation.
It's a draft, it's a workshop.
It's a workshop, it's a workshop.
Landing the plane,
I'm
yeah.
curious about
There
what's...
could be errors everywhere.
It is, but it has, a level that is far more granular, I think, in some ways than we've seen, at least in terms of the breakdowns. It's not just lines. But I wanted to ask about what seemed to be the number of cell phones that the school has issued to people. I mean, in certain cases, it makes absolute sense that you would want people to be on 24-hour call. I can't understand why building TAs would be those, for example. I can't understand why a human resources person would be that. I can't understand why the school nurse would be that. I mean, is she dealing with emergencies outside of school? Does she make home visits? That doesn't seem to make a lot of... The head teacher? Why would that be necessary?
Because it's the emergency, yes. Some of it predates you, but thank you so much. It's just wonderful. And so when the safety subcommittee met quite a bit last year, they were talking about a duress system, some sort of emergency response system that is portable for TAs who go outside with the children during recess, staff who go outside with our middle schoolers for Foursquare and all things that they, so that we could just hit a button and it goes immediately to the safety complex. We actually all have that. It is, I don't want to activate it. I'm afraid to activate it. Yes, so it's a push-to-talk, it's a push-to-talk feature. So we can push it, talk to each other, it goes directly to the safety complex. So our iPhones replaced an extra system, an extra emergency response system, a portable system. Also, our nurse needs to be part of our emergency response system. She's part of our team. We also have kids who are insulin-dependent diabetics, who have devices that now speak, to the cloud. And so all of those readings are in the cloud. And so when Nurse Dunn is on the run, administering help or medication or getting a student from a classroom, she has her cell phone on her, and the emergency call from the cloud for any student with the pump device that is digitized, she will get all those readings and notified in real time.
Using the examples you just provided, the building TAs and the nurse, those three devices, at the end of the day, they remain in the building?
The TAs remain in the building. I believe the nurses remains in the building. Admin, we bring ours home.
So there's no alternative other than an annual subscription for an iPhone for these? I mean, it seems sort of,
It does double duty, so rather than add another response system, a duress pendant, if you remember, safety subcommittee members, those were very expensive systems. So I remember outlining this in a memo or two, or a couple of memos last year. We found it more cost-effective and just more expedient to have one device, one network, and this was actually suggested to us by the chiefs, police chief and the fire chief. So we're hooked right to them. Also, when we activate our emergency component here, we are elevated within AT&T. So we sort of scramble everyone else out and we take over.